It's another Red Friday. The Chiefs are 1-0, and they have to come up with something new to combat some of these injuries and what they're looking at in Week 2. Let's go over the game plan. Welcome back to RGR. It's nice to see you. I'm Ryan. This is me going rogue on the Chiefs and the NFL. Got a couple of little things to get out of the way, and then we're going to talk about how these Chiefs are going to go into and start looking at how to attack the Raiders as they come into Week 2. You'll notice below the description of this video, there's a new bar that has a bunch of the gear in it. The new t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's one of the things of getting to 10,000 subs. Thank you guys for that. And I have a lot of ideas for new gear, but I want to give you guys this. If you see anything in that store that you're looking for, I can get you free delivery if you use the code GETIT at checkout. I want to make sure that all the subs get that right off the bat. Second thing, I want to answer, been a lot of questions lately about the notifications. I'm going to throw an image up here of what it looks like on mobile. If you get notifications on a desktop, laptop, whatever, on a website, not a problem. YouTube will send them to you. But if you're on mobile, you have some options. You can click here for all of them, personalized or none of them. So you may want to check your settings if you're not getting notified of the live Q&As or some of the new videos. Now that said, I want to do a quick minute about the news that Tyreek Hill got injured. We all saw that in the last game, and since then spent an overnight in Jacksonville in the hospital and did get back to Kansas City. Has been seen, and they're working on the swelling and coming up with a plan. He's not going to IR at this point. They're talking about 4 to 6 weeks. And I want to give you guys a look of what that injury is here. Give you guys an idea of what this injury is for Tyreek Hill and why he's walking around in a sling. And it starts here. This is a front-facing image of where the sternum and the clavicles come together. And you can see here the body of the clavicle, the sponginess is the interior of the bone itself, as is some of this sternum matter, which is cartilage and bone together. And it forms this congestion right here at the bottom of your throat. You can probably feel this particular notch here where the interclavicular ligament lies, right in the center at the bottom of your throat. And that ligament actually stretches, you can see, across the top, connecting both the clavicles together, giving a little bit of structural rigidity in terms of when your arms move backwards. That's the point where they're attached to the sternum. And you see how tightly the first rib comes in here as well. And that is attached by another mechanism that provides some stability behind the clavicle. And that's the costal, which is the word for the ribs. The ligament between the first rib and the clavicle actually comes back up and behind some. But the majority of what stabilizes the joint is this front anterior capsular ligament, which is a capsule meaning covering the bulk of the surface area, and anterior meaning in front of the body. So those are the things that, subluxation or dislocation, where some of these ligamentous structures can be either stretched or torn, and that's what leads to the severity of the injury. So it can be a severe issue, and that's why they're very cautious with it. But that's the structure of what's going on. Don't know the specifics of the Tyreek Hill injury itself, but this is what the anatomy looks like. Now, the first major task in this game plan is to build on what they've already started. We saw a good outing in Jacksonville from the front seven, but in particular, they have to get the pass rush to actually get home. There was a lot of pressure without a lot of production in terms of sacks and hits against Jacksonville, and Minshew in particular. When we look at what happened with the Raiders in Week 1, you can see that both from PFF grades as well as the number of pressures given up, that the weak points here are pretty familiar, and it's kind of going old school. The Chiefs can attack and probably get the most production out of attacking the edges, with Trent Brown, a massive man that you saw on Hard Knocks, as well as Colton Miller, who seems to have progressed, at least for one game, going against Bradley Chubb from the Broncos last week, but seems to have taken a step forward from where he was last season when Frank Clark pretty much had his way with him. So that's something for Frank to build upon, but it's also something that they're going to do some things to move guys around a little bit, get some matchups. But the two edge players on the offensive unit for the Raiders are exactly where the Chiefs want to attack. A little more traditional. You might even see Chris Jones go outside sometimes. But when he isn't, old friend Jordan Devey is the next guy that, in terms of grades and in terms of pressures allowed, is the next obvious target that you want to attack. And I think Chris Jones knows him pretty well and can probably get something done in a way that allows him to take advantage of that experience practicing with him. Now, Devey's no stretch for the imagination of being an elite player, but he is fairly solid. And I think between that, you're going to see some shifting again. Like we saw, where double teams are coming over to the left side of the Raiders' offensive line, the right side of the defense, toward Frank Clark and Chris Jones. And what that does on the opposite side is frees things up a little bit more for Alex Okafor, for any of the blitzes that will come from that side. We saw both Juan Thornhill on one. We saw Javarius Ward blitz last week. I expect to see more of that. And I think that's the side that you really want to try to get it done on. When the Chiefs get the ball, they want to take their time and they want to attack the Raiders' defense where it's weakest. And that really is straight down the middle. Vontaze Burfict looks like he's playing under control so far. I don't quite buy it that he's over his nasty trickerations from the past. But in one outing at least, he looked fairly mobile. That said, he has not been over the course of his career. He has not been a coverage guy per se in getting out there, especially against tight ends, and more importantly against tight ends like Travis Kelce that are just elite in terms of athleticism. The other thing that comes into play here is that they lost Jonathan Abram, who was I think probably their most impactful rookie, at least so far, but I expected him to be so for their season. A player that comes up and hits you like a ton of bricks. They tried to switch him out a little bit, and I don't really like him back at the back of the defense for the Raiders, just like I don't like, very similar to Dan Sorensen, plays best up at the line. But Abrams really brings the intensity and brings the physicality to it. Well, he did so much that he hurt himself. Tore a labrum, and he is out for the season. So there is a gaping hole at the safety spot in the Raiders' defense. And that just opens things up for Travis Kelce. You can see him do the things that he does well, the crossers, the seam routes. I think you're going to see some of those deep corner routes too. That's how I would attack this defense and try to get the timing so that it's not super long drops for Patrick Mahomes, but it's not just the quick hitters. And I think right down the middle is where you can attack this defense the most. And that goes for the other guy that I think can really get some payoff from this is Mecole Hardman, especially with Sammy's breakout week. And now being able to focus on Kelce so much, that really takes the attention. And I think you're going to see the Raiders bracket one, if not both of those players, and give them the attention that they deserve. And while they have to respect Mecole's speed, I don't know that they're ready for him to really take a step forward. Now, I know he had one target and he dropped that one this last week, and I think that's probably going to be a case where the jitters are over because I think they're going to have a chance to feed him and really get him a lot of touches this week against a defense that's porous in the middle so he can run out of the slot and do the things that he was comfortable with at Georgia. I think that makes a really great transition for him, and I think that's probably the first priority on offense. On the defensive side, what you have to do in order to get this game to function better than what we saw last week, despite a win, and despite holding the Jacksonville offense pretty far down until late in the game, you saw some mistakes. A lot of mistakes in the secondary. And some of that was passing off of routes. If you missed the film room this week, I did a video on some of that. And even there's more there. You can say whether a route was beaten by a player or a player came off of his zone because of what he saw. Either way, that's not understanding the defense. It's not communicating the defense as to who has what. And the eye discipline is going to be important for all of the DBs, but they have to get on the same page. Ward had some problems in passing off routes. Had a little bit of trouble in man as well. Breeland missed a couple of things. Again, I think all of these guys right now can play better coming forward. Having their eyes on the passer sometimes can be deceptive. And I think Carr isn't the most complex guy with his eyes, but he's a seasoned professional, and you have to give him that respect. So I think the focus this week really has to be on locking down what the secondary calls are, where the responsibilities are. And like Tyrann Mathieu said, you got to clean that up so that everybody's on the same page and everybody's going the same direction so that the group as a whole has all the gaps covered. You saw Tyrell Williams have a pretty good night for the Raiders. I think that's interesting. And the tight end Waller's going to be really, really unique. I think this is a perfect setup for Mathieu to kind of shadow him, even though the height difference, this is something we saw him do against Ronk and everybody else. That particular assignment's going to be interesting. But again, if you have your zones covered and you have everyone laid out so that they know where to be, this shouldn't be the kind of breakaway big plays that we saw last week. So look for that change to be coming in this week's game plan. And lastly, top of the list, really the only priority overall, everything else can be disregarded if you have to, if it comes down to it. But the number one thing you must do is protect Pat. This team lives or dies by what Patrick Mahomes is able to do. And if you didn't get a shiver last week when he had to go into that tent, well, this is key. And you can say that he was moved around a lot, didn't have a ton of impacts. But what did impact him was that roll up, and any time that he can get touched by the defense is a risk to this season. So batten down the hatches, get your communication better along the front, and that starts with Austin Reeder and moves out to the edges from there. But they have to make sure. Fish, everybody who's going to face something unknown, whether it's Arden Key or Clelin Ferrell, whatever it's going to be, the offensive line has to have their things together, and they have to be functioning as one unit. Again, the calls and the consistency together to keep Pat on his feet and keep him from getting impacts. Now, he's going to be hobbled a little bit, probably not a ton, but certainly better than he was in the second half last week where he still got things done. But the report is that he is continuing to get better and feeling better. So let's keep him so that he has a pocket to step up into and deliver the ball. I think you're going to see some more of what we saw in the second half last week, where it's going to be the shorter to intermediate routes. There'll be shots, but I don't think that's going to be the bulk of the game plan like we normally see from him, where he's always thinking about taking the time to go long. And that's what I have for the Chiefs game plan this week. Let me know what you think. What do you want them to do? How much should Shady be involved? Should there be a split there? Who's the next guy up? Is it Demarcus Robinson? Can he take the slack over Mecole Hardman? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you're not subbed, click that and the notification. Hope you guys have a great one. It's been a great week. I'll be back with the Monday Night Live. I'll try to do a post-game live too. Just not sure about the timing on that, but we'll live up to it. I hope you guys have a blast. Enjoy the game. Check these videos out, and I'll talk to you next time.